one thing I do a lot of is I read a lot of poetry on the tombstones themselves, called the epitaph. Certain epitaphs repeat over and over again, and you can just see one or two words, maybe through the lichen, and you know what the poem is going to be. Weep not, Papa and Mama, for me, for I am waiting in heaven for thee, is a standard one on children's graves. You see it all the time. There are longer poems that you see all the time. So it comes as a great pleasure to run across a verse you've never seen before, especially a lengthy one, and to transcribe that and say, this is unusual, and I don't know why they chose this. I was over in the Wesley Cemetery, actually pretty early on in this process, and I found one of the older tombstones. It was toward the back, and it had a long verse which I transcribed, and through a series of events, this is what the tombstone looked like. And it was for a man named Lafayette Buchanan, who died, bifocal moment, who died in 1840, which is pretty old for this part of Arkansas and for this cemetery. The whole lower half of his tombstone was his long verse. And what it says is, thou art gone to the grave, but we will not deplore thee, since God was thy ransometh guide. He gave thee, he took thee, and he will restore thee. And death has no sting, since the Savior has died. Now it sounds like a hymn, has kind of a hymn cadence to it. The next thing you know, I'm finding this verse again over, I think, in Searcy County. And I'm finding it in a collection of epitaphs from, I've already forgotten, another part of the state. The day I was over in the Ozark Cemetery, when Hop and I started filming, I found it again. Now, I'm not finding exactly the same verse each time. I'm finding variations on it. And my father, who is an excellent researcher and who is very good with internet searches, turned up for me the fact that this was from a poem written by a man named Reginald Heber. Reginald Heber was the Anglican Bishop of Calcutta in the 1700s. He was an Englishman living in Calcutta, England. Sorry, he was an Englishman living in Calcutta, India, and he was also a poet. He wrote a number of poems that were set to music, and these were then made into hymns. Now, most people would know his hymn, Holy, 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 and he also did From Greenland's Icy Mountains, which are fairly well known. But he had a 3-year-old son who died, and he wrote a poem to his son, and that's what is appearing on tombstones in the Arkansas Ozarks. Now, I can only assume that this hymn was put into a hymnal or hymnals that came to Arkansas and was used in churches. People choosing an epitaph would choose, very often did choose verses from hymns. But given that this is written for a child and was written such a long time ago and made it to the Arkansas Ozarks, just fascinates me how things migrate. The poem, actually Reginald Heber wrote several poems about funerals, but the one that he wrote, actually I said 3 years old, this volume says that it was written when the child was an infant, and it was the only child that Heber and his wife had. So he's writing this to his only child, and it's been titled At the Funeral. Thou art gone to the grave, but we will not deplore thee, though sorrows and darkness encompass the tomb. Thy Savior has passed through its portal before thee, and the lamp of his love is thy guide through the gloom. Thou art gone to the grave, we no longer behold thee, nor tread the rough path of the world by thy side. But the wide arms of mercy are spread to enfold thee, and sinners may die, for the sinless has died. Thou art gone to the grave, and its mansion forsaking, perchance thy weak spirit in fear lingered long, but the mild rays of paradise beam on thy waking, and the sound which thou heardst was the seraphin's song. Thou art gone to the grave, but we will not deplore thee, for whose God was thy ransom, thy guardian and guide. He gave thee, he took thee, and he will restore thee, and death has no sting, for the Savior has died. I find that so touching and so comforting. He's speaking to his dead child, but he's saying it's all right. You are going God, because of what God has done. But it's filled with lines of comfort, although he's trying to comfort himself. I mean, there's something called consolation literature. It's what the words that parents choose to put on the grave of a child, how they come to terms with their child's death. Whether it's saying, God chose our child and we should be honored, or God hath honored our child by the speed of his choice, or my child has gone ahead to prepare the way for us. The language that a parent chooses to come to terms with why their child died has been studied. I'm not sure it's been studied in Arkansas, but there have been articles written about that. And here is a father consoling himself over the loss of his only child. And that poem has made its way to Arkansas. It's been split up. I've never found the entire poem, but I found individual verses in 4 different cemeteries. And here it is. We've lost the thread. I mean, nowhere on these tombstones does it say who wrote it, because it was simply a hymn verse that some family found enough meaning there, found enough consolation there to have it carved on a loved one's grave. And I find that journey that this poem has made absolutely fascinating.